Welcome to another video. I wasn't gonna make this because I literally just made a more organic, raw version of the video that I'm about to make, and so a lot of times when I feel like I express it for the first time naturally and just out of inspiration, it's just more natural and organic, and honestly, it flows better. And then when I try and tell the same story again and repeat it, I realize I don't know, the first message was better. But here I am trying to do this again because I realize stories aren't meant to just be told once. You're supposed to continue to tell them, even if it comes out a different way. That's the art of storytelling. It's supposed to be spontaneous, and maybe the story even changes a little bit each time, but nonetheless the message kind of remains the same. And so what I'm going to talk about in this video was the meditation that I just had. I just came off a beautiful meditation, and I started the meditation with a chant, a zima, which is essentially a chant to feel the energy of the earth and to remind us that we are protected and held by the earth. It's to ground us and to also remind us that we are, connected to the earth, but as well as connected to the stars and the heavens, right? And so I started chanting that song for however long, and after I was chanting it, I slowly started to fall into a meditation, and I slowly stopped chanting, right? So in the meditation, it was already more peaceful because of the chant, I believe. So it kind of already just put me into more of a deep trance-like state. And so it was very peaceful, and I was sitting there, and I began to ask myself the question, who am I? Which is a practice that I haven't really, put too much emphasis on. I've heard about the practice of going into meditation and repeatedly asking yourself the question, who am I? Not even necessarily looking for an answer, but it's more of just I don't know, maybe a breaking down of the ego and asking yourself, who am I? Who am I? Just kind of over and over again. And so I haven't been too consistent with that practice, but it just came to mind to start asking that to myself. And so as I was repeatedly asking myself the question, I realized that the voice asking the question was no longer my own voice anymore. It now became this sort of feminine, motherly voice asking the question in a very low tone, who am I? Who am I? Kind of like a native spirit in a way, if I what came to mind was a native, American or something, kind of asking the question in a very low tone of voice, but a motherly energy, right? Who am I? Who am I? And so I kept asking myself. It kept asking me the question, or just kept repeating in my head. And now what happened in the meditation and in my mind's eye was interesting, and that's why I want to make this video. I began to see an image in my head, which was this image of a line pretty much between my brain and my head. And so now I'm watching and observing this with my mind's eye. It showed a line between my head, and on the right side of the brain appeared to be a man in his 20s, very pretty masculine man, and he heard the voice, who am I? And so he was kind of startled and confused at first, and he was like, well, who am I? I know who I am. I feel like I don't even need to tell you, but I guess I will. And he started kind of listing off the typical things, like his name and his job and what he likes to do and family and, things like that. And he was kind of even mad that he felt like he had to answer, because he was like, why? He's like, this isn't even, he knew kind of it wasn't even his voice. He was like, who's even asking me this question, right? And so he was kind of just upset at the fact, who's demanding this answer from me? I know who I am. I don't need to tell you. And that's when he realized that the voice was outside of him. outside of what was known to him. And so he looked over to his left, and what showed on the left side of the brain and in my mind's eye view appeared to be a woman around the same age, in mid-20s or something. And the woman was kind of more convinced that it was her own voice asking her the question, maybe because it was a feminine voice. She just kind of was like, oh, this is just another, like, you know, one of those voices in my head, a random thought asking me this question. And so she kind of began to answer as well. She was like, yeah, well, you know, this, that. But she also realized, like, wait, like, is this even my voice? Is this one of my thoughts? And she realized that the man heard the voice as well. And that's when it came to her that, okay, this voice isn't inside my own head. So what's going on here? And so they both realized and looked at each other and noticed the fact that they could both hear the voice and the question asking them, who am I? And they began to kind of fight over whose voice it was. The man was claiming it was his voice and that he should be the one to answer the question. But she was like, no, this is my voice. This is inside my head. It's a motherly feminine voice. Like I'm the one who's supposed to answer this question. And, you know, I know who I am, and I'll tell you right now exactly who I am. And so what happened after that was, as they were fighting, the motherly voice asking, who am I, kept repeating. And now what I saw in my imagination, mind's eye during the meditation, was between that line of my head or the brain appeared to be one single eye that sat right in between the line of both of them. And it wasn't separate, like in a middle part, it was overlaying and overlapping. So it resided on both sides of them, indicating that they were not separate, but they were actually connected. And so as the mind's eye kept asking the voice, who am I? You know, maybe it was the great mother, or Mother Earth and Gaia, Mother Nature, right? The nurturer. It kept asking the question, who am I? But it wasn't looking for an answer. It wasn't wanting them to answer. I believe what it wanted was for them to realize that they are one, and for them to unite and to become into union with each other. And that was kind of it. I just thought that was an interesting experience, you know, and so I immediately wrote it down, and then I wanted to share it because I usually don't share stuff like this, but I thought it was a pretty interesting meditation experience, and so I just felt the need to share it. But yeah, let me know if you guys ever experienced anything like that, a sort of, you know, meditation experience. And I was just observing this whole thing, you know. When you meditate and have visions like this and stuff like that, you're not supposed to question it, really. You just want to observe it and not necessarily judge it. And so that's what I did. I was just kind of watching this and letting it happen. And like I said, I think the chant already got me into a very Zen energy. And so I wasn't like fighting with my own mind when I fell into the meditation. So it made these visions and, you know, imagination to kind of come to the surface easier. But anyways, that was it. Peace.